So, why are super hot peppers so weird? Because see this one here? Come on, focus. This one's got 3 cotyledons. And so this is a ghost pepper here. And I have a Reaper, Carolina Reaper, that also has 3 cotyledons right here. So, if you can see that. So it's really weird. Like, I don't know. It only seems to happen with the super hots. And then there's another weird deformity here. Let me just see if I can focus. Come on, focus. It's really hard to see, but there's like a double pepper seedling. It's literally 2 seedlings fused together. So I don't know if that's just something weird that happens with super hots or what, but it's interesting. Hey guys, what's up? It's Lucas, and in this video I'm just going to be showing you my pepper seedlings and giving you some tips and tricks that I've used in the past and that I still use to this day to get really good growth on my pepper seedlings. I'm no expert. I don't have a degree in this, I'm not a pro, but I have had pretty successful pepper plants in the past, and so I think I'm able to shed some light on growing peppers indoors and just the general process of growing peppers from seeds, tips for growing seedlings indoors, and yeah, so let's get started. So my first tray here is just a mixture of peppers. I got orange habaneros, and I got sweet peppers, I got sweet banana peppers, I got California Wonder Bells, red bells, hot pepper lantern habaneros, just a whole bunch of different varieties. And I have another tray over here, pretty much the same varieties, just a mixture. I have about 10 varieties. I'll post all the variety names in the description if you're interested. I'm also growing some super hots this year, as you saw in the beginning of the video. These here are ghost peppers, and these 2 are Carolina Reapers. And so those are very hot peppers, world's hottest peppers pretty much. And I do have some chocolate habaneros, which is what I've been wanting to grow this year. So these are the chocolate habs. So yeah, I have a good variety going on. So far things are doing pretty well. Everything's looking nice and green, nice and healthy. First set of true leaves have emerged. And yeah, so what I've been doing basically is just been keeping these plants under my grow light here. This is it's called the Floralite tabletop grow light model, and it's from a company called Lee Valley, which is here in Canada. If you're interested in this grow light, I'm gonna leave a link in the description for you if you want to check it out. I'll try to zoom out for you guys so you can see a bit better. So this is the grow light. It's kind of dark in here, sorry about that. And I have a bunch of junk on top, but so this grow light is, I'd say it's about 4 feet wide by a foot and a half this way. So it's not too big, but I can get by with it. It's a pretty good size, especially if you have a fairly small garden. So the downside to this grow light is that it's quite expensive. I actually got it for Christmas, and I had to chip in some money because it was, a little too pricey. But you definitely don't need to go with this setup. There's I know that a lot of gardeners just use regular shop lights from Home Depot or any any big box store. Those work really well. You should be able to get those fairly cheaply. Another type of grow light that's pretty popular these days are the LED ones, and I've personally never tried these, but I've heard that they're pretty expensive, but they do a pretty good job with seedlings, grow really healthy seedlings indoors. So light is very important for growing pepper seedlings. If you don't have good light, your seedlings are going to get leggy. They're not going to develop properly, and that's why one of the biggest reasons my peppers do so well. So as for the bulbs, these are actually T5 48-inch Verilux grow tubes. They're just fluorescent lights, but they're specialized for plants. So they have like special wavelengths that are ideal for growing plants. So if I were to get another grow light, what I would do is I'd just go to Home Depot and I'd buy a shop light fixture, and then I'd get these special plant bulbs, and just put those in, because you really don't need to spend a lot on a fixture. It's mainly the bulbs that matter. So yeah, that's what I would do. I don't have much space under here, so I might need to get a new grow light at some point. All right, my second tip for growing pepper seedlings indoors is to use good potting soil. Now, what I'm using here is a mixture of 2 different bags of potting soil, and perlite and vermiculite. So I'm not going to go into super detail in this video, because I actually have another video about that shows you how to make that potting soil. Again, I'll leave the link to that in the description if you're interested in that. But yeah, potting soil is critical, because if your plant's roots don't extend down into the soil, your plants aren't going to develop properly. They're going to be stunted. They're not going to do well. And you need a bit of nutrients in there just so your plants get off to a good start, strong start. Ultimately, at the beginning, you just want to focus on lights. Lights are the main thing, I think, but potting soil is another key factor. So I would say the main thing to keep in mind with potting soil is make sure it's loose and make sure it's fluffy. Because if you have, if you use clay, for example, when pepper seedlings are small, their roots are pretty weak and it's harder for them to extend throughout clay. So you want something that's, light and fluffy and that's easy for their roots to penetrate. All right, so my third tip is proper watering. Watering is pretty important with seedlings. So what I do personally is I have these trays here. These are 72 cell seed trays, and I have these, excuse me, and I have these trays underneath that you can pour water into, which is what I do. So once I feel that this is getting a bit lighter, so right now it's pretty heavy, you can just kind of gauge by how heavy it is. If it's light, then you need to water. So in that case, I get a bottle of water, about this size bottle. This is 946 milliliters, so almost a liter. And I just pour one whole bottle into this tray. And what happens is the soil actually soaks up the water throughout the whole tray. It's kind of like a wick, and it waters the seedlings very consistently. And I think that's probably the best way to water. That's what I always do. Yeah, as you can see, this tray is pretty well watered. You can see the dark soil. Another way to tell if your plants need to be watered is if you stick your finger into the soil, like say about 1/2 inch to 1 centimeter deep. If you feel that it's kind of moist, you should be good. If not, you might need to consider watering. So I think the biggest mistake that you can make with watering seedlings is overwatering, because a lot of people think, oh, if my seedlings don't have enough water, they're not going to do well. And of course that's true, but the key is you need moderation. And too much water is going to be a lot harder to fix than not enough water, because it takes a long time for that water to evaporate. And excess water will actually stunt growth, and it can cause mold to form on the soil. So I actually have an example here for you, right here. I have a bit of mold growing here. Let me see if we can focus. You can see there's a bit of white mold on the surface there. It's kind of hard to tell on the camera, but anyway, what this will do is it will kill your pepper seedlings. And this is something called damping off, basically. It's excess moisture causes your seedlings to actually start dying, and it can happen very fast. I've experienced it many times. In fact, I'm experiencing it right now. As you can see, there's some really skinny looking things there. That's actually wilting, dying pepper seedlings. And the cause of that is excess moisture. So the best thing you can do to prevent that is to water sparingly and only water when necessary. But if that's not an option, or if you mess up, which of course I did in this case, something you can do to combat that is use a fan. Now this here is just a regular, office fan. Doesn't have to be expensive, just a cheap fan. And I put it on the low setting. I'm gonna switch it off right now because it probably sounds horrible. But I put it on the low setting. As you can see, low right here. Or no, this is, yeah, low. And what this does is it just dries out the soil, and it basically just aerates things. So I've found this is pretty useful for preventing damping off. But I actually just started using this fan today because I started noticing this damping off. I didn't actually show a video on it, but what I do is once the seedlings sprout, like here, once the seedlings germinate in the cups, what I do is I transplant them into these trays. So they each get their own separate cell, separate compartment. And this way, the seedlings aren't competing for nutrients, they aren't competing for water, and they aren't competing for space. So another tip I have is to make sure you transplant your seedlings into their own individual spots, into their own containers. That'll just ensure that they're not competing. So another thing I do with my pepper seedlings is I rotate the trays. So if you notice, these seedlings here aren't getting as much light because the majority of the light from these fluorescent bulbs, believe it or not, is actually in kind of the center of the grow light here. And so these guys on the outside aren't getting quite as much light, right? On the outside edges, like even back here, these guys right here, the center kind of the light is the brightest. So what I do is I'd say maybe every like 3 days, I just rotate the trays or like turn them around. And this just gives every seedling an equal spot in the limelight, I guess you could say. A lot of people wonder what kind of fertilizer they should use on their seedlings. And I actually do not use fertilizer on my seedlings. I've never felt the need for it in the past. I actually use potting soil that already contains a bit of fertilizer, and it's slow release. So that way I have no reason to fertilize. So I would recommend just getting a bag that contains a little bit of fertilizer. It usually should say on the package, like for example, I think mine said feeds up to a couple months or a few months. I can't remember, but yeah, fertilizer, not really necessary at the seedling stage. Once you plant your seedlings outside, then I would add some fertilizer, but I'll probably do a video on that later once I plant my peppers. Probably end of May, beginning of June. So yeah, if you're interested, stay tuned for that. So you might be wondering, do different types of peppers need different care? Like for example, do super hots need different care than the sweet peppers? At the seedling stage, personally, I don't think so. I have never really treated them differently. I would say germination is a bit different because for super hots, germination usually takes a lot longer than sweet peppers. For example, my Carolina Reapers and ghost peppers, they actually just recently started sprouting. So that's why they're pretty behind compared to the other ones. They actually took like 20 days to sprout. So as far as germination goes, it's different, I'd say, in general. But for care, once the seedlings actually sprout, really no difference. Just treat them all the same. You know, good light conditions, good soil conditions, good watering, aeration. Really, it's the same. So something that a lot of people talk about is topping pepper plants. And it's basically what you do is you cut off the top of the pepper plant. And most people do this when the pepper plant forms a Y shape, like the stem kind of branches into a Y formation, like this. Would I recommend doing that? Personally, no, I don't do that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that, but I just personally don't find it necessary. The thing is, I live in Canada and we have a relatively short growing season, so I want these plants to be producing as soon as possible, really. The only time I would really recommend topping is if you have a super long growing season and you're not desperate to get peppers right away. A lot of people think that it's necessary to top pepper seedlings because it creates a nice bushy plant with a low center of gravity that's going to produce, you know, a lot of peppers. They think that they're basically like stacking the plant for production. But I've never topped my peppers, and I've had amazing results. I've had amazing production, you know, like 100 pods from one plant. And I found that certain pepper plants have different types of growth habits. For example, some, like bell peppers, tend to kind of grow taller than they do wide. They don't really bush out that much. And they usually stay fairly short. Whereas other types of peppers, like super hots, for example, like Carolina Reapers, ghost peppers, Trinidad Muruga scorpions. Those ones tend to get bushy just naturally without even having to prune them. I just kind of like to leave it up to nature with peppers. I've actually never tried pruning, so I really don't know for sure, but maybe I'll do an experiment this year. I'll try doing some plants pruned and some unpruned, and I'll do a video about the results. But yeah, if you're new to growing peppers, I personally would suggest not to top, but if you're convinced that it's going to help you, then by all means go ahead. It probably won't hurt things, but it might just delay fruiting by a few weeks or a couple weeks. So I hope that you found this video a bit helpful. If you're new to growing peppers, it can be a bit of a learning curve for you. I found that they're pretty much the same as growing tomatoes, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. I'll definitely try to reply to you. And yeah, good luck with your peppers. Hopefully everything grows well for you. And have a good day or night wherever you are. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye.